This show can be found on Podcast DC, the new local app with hundreds of options in local news, health, and of course, the DMV region. Download the Podcast DC app to hear the Empire shows as well as other great content.
Empire.
The Aaron Rodgers watch continues. Where do things stand now as the offseason program winds down? What's up, everybody? It's Mike Jones. Thanks for coming back for another episode of the Football Jones podcast. You can read me at usatoday.com. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @ByMikeJones. And yes, we talked about Julio Jones earlier this week. The main other big story in the NFL continues to be Aaron Rodgers and the Packers because, no surprise, he didn't show up to the mandatory minicamp this week. And so my guest for this week is Olivia Reiner of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. She's up there, up close and personal, so I wanted to be able to take a pulse on where things are there. And so we're going to get to that very shortly. Things are rolling along here with the off season. A lot of teams are wrapping up mini camps this week. Some teams have one more week of workouts next week. Some will have their mandatory next week. Some will just be voluntary. And then things will go quiet for a little bit. One interesting aspect from this week came out of Washington, where Montez Sweat, third-year linebacker, said that he doesn't want to get the vaccine and sees no point in treating COVID if he hasn't received COVID. And I know that raised some eyebrows because the NFL is really kind of pushing everybody to get vaccinated. But just from what I've been able to gather, Montez is not alone. Just like you hear from your friends and family and neighbors, people are very divided on the vaccine, and that's no different for these players. The players, there are some who are absolutely on board with it, and from talking to people around the league, there are players who have some skepticism. And so Montez was not just speaking for himself, he was also speaking for a number of players who are a little bit wary of injecting this into their bodies when they don't know if it actually is going to work, if there is any side effects from it down the road. And he, said that he wanted to get some more information on that. And so I think that, from people I've talked to, there are team employees, there are players they're conflicted on this thing. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the NFL handles this as the season gets closer here. Obviously, they want everybody healthy. They want everybody to be to be vaccinated, so they reduce the risks of COVID and any interruptions and things like that, so they don't have to worry about key players being quarantined at key junctures of the season and everything like that. But this is something that's just another reminder that these guys are people. They're not just robots who just follow along with whatever. They have questions, and guys have their own thoughts, and they're going to do their own research and make their decisions. Yes, obviously, that push is going to be there. That encouragement to get the vaccine is going to be there, but these guys want to be informed as much as they possibly can. So it's going to be interesting to see as we get to training camp. And I don't know how much of it's anybody's business. These players are asked, but I think it's a personal decision. Everybody needs to be safe. Everybody needs to do their part, but at the same time, I know that there are some players who don't, from what I've talked about, they don't want to be asked. They're like, hey, this is my deal. I'll handle it however I want. They don't want to deal with the scolding or whatever from people if they decide not to. But it's just another interesting aspect of the human side of football and this world that we're in as the pandemic hopefully is fading away, but is still not totally gone. But we'll continue to monitor that there. So here we go. Now let's turn our attention to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers with Olivia Reiner of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
It's NBA playoff time, so get on over to monkeyknifefight.com, daily fantasy sports site that's partnered with the Football Jones podcast. Go over there and play at least $10 each for the next 4 days and get a free $20 NBA ticket. Just use my show code JONES. Remember, they are still running their instant 100% deposit match up to $100 for new depositors, so take advantage of this limited time offer today. Get on over to monkeyknifefight.com, play mkf.com/Jones. That's play mkf.com/Jones. All right, and here we are with Olivia Reiner of the Journal Sentinel. Olivia, how are you doing? And thank you so much for joining me.
I'm doing really well. It's a lovely day in Green Bay. We are experiencing a heat wave, so it's a little sweaty, humid up here, but it's nice for a change. I'll take this over a snowstorm, a blizzard, any day.
Now, what counts as a heat wave in Green Bay? Because I know what a heat wave down here in like the mid-Atlantic states are. What is the heat wave up there like?
All right. So it's like 90 is the high, maybe. So it's not bad. It's not like Phoenix weather or anything like that, but it's still pretty hot for me. I don't do very well in the sun personally.
Yeah, okay, I got you. Yeah, that's pretty hot. I didn't know if you were gonna be like, oh, it's 75 degrees here. Some people way up north think that 70s and 80s is hot, but 90, no matter where you are, it is pretty hot. But I wanted to have you on, and I know that you have a busy day and you're about to run out to a third day of Packers mini camp, and so that's why I wanted to have you on. So you kind of give us a pulse. Obviously, this team, there's no bigger story right now than Aaron Rodgers and this standoff with the Packers, and so I wondered what it's been like at mini camp, not having number 12 out there, and what you've been able to gather from just the team as a whole. And I know it's still kind of weird. You guys don't get a whole lot of access to players like the old days pre-COVID, but what have you been able to gather on just how this team is doing, not having their most prominent leader out there on the field?
Outwardly, at least, it seems like it's business as usual. And I would even venture to say that inwardly, it also seems like it's business as usual. The coaches don't want to put the players in a state of panic. I think as their job is to try to alleviate that as much as humanly possible. So I would say that right now, I mean, just the way that what we've heard from the players over the past few days, and inevitably, especially every single offensive player in these Zoom calls right now has been answering the question, how are you handling all of this outside noise, this drama that's surrounding the team? And for the most part, everyone understands that this is business. It happens. Players have their own personal business issues that they have to attend to every single day. And this is no different. It just happens to be the most prominent player on the team. So I think going into all of this, I guess it's been a month and a half that we've been having these conversations about Aaron Rodgers and his discontent with the Packers. We were wondering, okay, what side are the players going to take in all of this? If Aaron Rodgers comes back, has he burned bridges with his current teammates? And I would go as far to say that if and when Rodgers comes back to this team, that he will be welcomed with open arms. Robert Tonyan, the tight end for the Packers, has said that he's kept in touch with Rodgers and he hasn't been necessarily poking and prodding about the situation. He's just there to support him as a friend. And I think that is predominantly what kind of contact the players have had with Rodgers, if any, over the last several weeks, is just lending their support if he needs it. So yeah, I would think that if Rodgers is able to mend some bridges with the front office, that the team would love to have him back, and who wouldn't? They certainly would love to have him back at this point.
And I would have to think that if Rodgers say that this is just all a part of the game or the plan, he would make sure that he stayed in contact with his teammates and even his coaches even if this was just something where he's trying to get something resolved with the front office and he does plan on coming back, right?
Yeah, and to that point, the grudge isn't with the players or the coaches. And when we heard Rodgers speak for the first and only time to the public, it was back a few weeks ago on SportsCenter. He made some comments to Kenny Mayne, and he was very explicit in like the the acceptance speech, like thank yous, kind of like, you know, I have a lot of respect for the fan base and for the coaching staff and for my teammates and so on and so forth. But very, very explicitly, he did not state that he had a lot of appreciation for the front office, for general manager Brian Gutekunst and CEO/president Mark Murphy. And Rodgers isn't just someone who will throw his words around for fun and not think through what he's saying. He's very calculated and specific and intentional with the words that he uses. So I clearly it's more about the front office than it has anything to do with the coaching staff and his teammates, and he's made that pretty clear.
If you were in Kenny Mayne's shoes, or say you were able to follow up on anything, was there anything that you came away from that interview? Because I think we've all seen it by now. He didn't actually say I want out. He didn't actually say, hey, I'm coming back. He didn't say, there's a lot he didn't say. So if you had a few follow-up questions for Rodgers, what would you have asked him? Yeah,
that is a great question. I think Kenny Mayne did a great job because it's hard to get Aaron Rodgers to just give a straight answer. It will end up being a little long-winded sometimes, and we've seen that from him throughout his time in Green Bay, at least in my 3 years in Green Bay. But that being said, the biggest question that I came away with from that discussion on SportsCenter was, what does he want? And to some extent, like, I don't know, some of the issues that Rodgers has with Green Bay in terms of like how he feels wronged or how he thinks teammates have been wronged over the years. Like there's some of those things I don't feel like the public needs to know absolutely everything. I think as like a journalist, I would like to know more details. Obviously, that's in my nature. But in terms of what he wants, I would like to know what that is. Is he looking for more money? Is he looking to have the general manager fired? Does he want to see Jordan Love? And these are all hypotheticals. Does he want to see Love gone from the team? Does he still feel so wronged by the draft pick a year ago? Those are the questions that I have. I would like to know what he wants, because then I think because the next question is, okay, what do the Packers have to do to try to appease him? That's where they are right now. And is it just a matter of more money? Can the Packers pay him more on average a year? Because if they traded him, I'm sure he could go find more money elsewhere. But the Packers don't want to trade him. So what can they do to mend the bridge? Is it possible? That was my biggest question coming away from that interview. And if I had an opportunity to ask Rodgers, that's what I would ask him.
Gotcha. Now, after that, shortly after, I guess a day or two after, Matt LaFleur talked, and he, I feel like he's done a good job throughout this thing. He's been put in a tough spot, but he, expressed optimism that, they still want him in the worst way, that he hoped he'd be there. And he was hoping he'd be there for this mandatory minicamp, and he's not. Were you surprised at all that he isn't there? And then what have you thought by even how Matt handled this when he talked just on Tuesday?
I think Matt LaFleur has handled this as best as he possibly can. As someone who more or less has nothing to do with anything that's currently going on right now, and everything is out of his control, he can fly out to California as many times as he wants to, and clearly nothing's going to change at this point. Rodgers' beef is larger than the coaching staff. So to that end, I give Matt LaFleur a lot of credit, because he is the one, not Brian Gutekunst. Matt LaFleur is the one that has to get out in front of the media, at least in these 3 days, every single day, and answer questions about the quarterback. And for the most part, he punts on the questions, but at least he's answering them. So I give him a lot of credit for that. As for your other question, can you remind me what your other?
Were you surprised that he didn't show up? Like Matt had said he was hoping he would, but he didn't.
Yeah, I am not surprised whatsoever. And I don't think most people are surprised that Rodgers didn't show up. I think the max he could be fined for missing minicamp. And by the way, we don't know if Rodgers is being fined. LaFleur declined to say whether or not the team was planning on waiving those fines. But I think the most Rodgers could be fined for missing all 3 days of minicamp was a little bit more than $93,000, which I would imagine for Aaron Rodgers is probably not a ton of money. Once we get to training camp, however, that's when those fines can start piling up pretty quickly. I believe for each day missed, he would have to owe about $50,000. Again, if the team chooses to fine him. So for him to miss mandatory minicamp, it's newsworthy because it is mandatory. Up until this point of the offseason, OTAs not mandatory. If he skips OTAs, and by the way, he wasn't the only player to skip OTAs, 5 of the veteran wide receivers did, and that was still significant because from the outside, it looked like, okay, all 5, the most veteran receivers on the team are skipping OTAs. Are they trying to send a message? But they're here for mandatory minicamp. But for Rodgers, it is newsworthy because this is the first mandatory portion of the offseason program. So we'll see closer to training camp. Perhaps we'll see. We'll see if the fines start to add up and if that's enough for him to want to come back. My guess, once again, is that he's going to have to change his mind about some bigger things in order for him to show up for training camp.
I feel like the move for them is to throw the fines out the window. If they're trying to patch up this relationship, they should just be like, you know what, this is going to be excused. We're not going to, because if they do fine him, that seems kind of petty, and it seems like it would make things even worse. Or am I wrong there?
No, and I think petty is probably the perfect word to use for that. Like to nickel and dime Aaron Rodgers when he clearly has some deep-seated issues with the team that to some degree, again, we don't know the full extent of Rodgers' gripes with the front office. We do have an idea that it could date back as early as this past year when the Packers drafted Jordan Love with the first overall pick and did not notify Aaron Rodgers that they were not only going to draft a quarterback in the first round, although Gutekunst did mention that it could be in the realm of possibility, drafting a quarterback in the first round going into the 2020 draft. I think he was asked about it leading up to that draft, and he was like, all cards are on the table. We draft the best player available. Quarterback could very well be that position. But not only did they draft a quarterback in the first round, they traded up to draft a quarterback in the first round. And Rodgers had no idea that they were doing so. At least that's what he told us. And looking back at that situation, when Brian Gutekunst was asked, like, hey, do you have any regrets about how you've handled your relationship with Aaron, the whole situation in general with the draft pick? And he said, yeah, I would have handled some things differently. And so we've at least got a little admission on the part of the Packers that, okay, things could have been handled differently with Rodgers. We don't know the full extent of everything that Rodgers has issues with. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this ends, and I don't know how Rodgers forgives them. I don't know if it's just a money thing. If he just wants more money, if he wants to be committed to for the last 3 years of his contract. I don't know. We'll see.
They've done a lot to position this team. I mean, the first 2 years with Matt LaFleur, they've been to the NFC Championship game and fallen short. They've done a lot to try to position this team to take that next step further. Is there another situation that's more Super Bowl ready for Rodgers? I mean, I would assume that if he wants to play and if he wants to go for a Super Bowl, this is kind of his best shot. And maybe it's a thing where they say, fine, I'm coming back here, but you better trade me in this offseason. I want out of here. But I don't know if there's really, is there a better fit that could give him a chance at a Super Bowl trophy in this season?
I'm not sure. I know there's been a few teams that have been thrown out there that Rodgers at least has a preference to going to, reportedly, if he is interested in seeking a trade. And I think those teams were Las Vegas, the 49ers, and the Broncos. And I think the Broncos, for some reason, have been seen as kind of a hot destination, maybe. I don't know. And perhaps Rodgers wants to be out west, closer to home. So maybe the Broncos. But I think Rodgers has a pretty good thing going with this team and with this new coaching staff. It's taken some time for him to get more comfortable in the new offense. 2019 was a good year. They went 13-3, but it wasn't the offense's best year. And they took a really big leap in their second year under Matt LaFleur, number 1 scoring offense in the league, number 5 in yards. So it took Rodgers some time to get comfortable, but he still has a good deal of freedom and can put his own twist on the plays at the line of scrimmage, which we know was something that was important to him in the last offense. Matt LaFleur has still given Rodgers a lot of free reign over this offense because Rodgers brings years and years of experience that quarterbacks like Jordan Love don't have yet, and they can't do the same things in Matt LaFleur's offense that Aaron Rodgers can. So, and not to mention Rodgers has grown in this offense with some of the receivers and the tight ends. Robert Tonyan has taken a huge step under Matt LaFleur, and we've seen players like Marquez Valdez-Scantling also flash their talents when he's healthy and when he's on. So I think Rodgers has a pretty good thing going here with the Packers. And who knows, this could really be the last year of that. I mean, there's some key players that are going to be up for contract extensions in the coming years, especially with the cap still kind of being down this upcoming season, and then expected to go up with the new TV deals. It could be a little while until we see the Packers might have to retool some things on both sides of the ball. So I think Green Bay would be a good place for him to be.
Now, you mentioned Jordan Love, and this isn't the worst thing right now for Jordan and for the Packers long-term for Rodgers not to be there, because Jordan, I imagine, did not get a lot of snaps even in practice last year, and now he's getting tons and tons of reps. How has he seemed? Because I know that yesterday, which was Wednesday, there was all these reports that he looked amazing. But as a whole, from what you've been able to see, what they've allowed you guys to see, what have you thought of him?
Yeah, I think it's early. Obviously, the Packers are currently, like every other team in the NFL at this point in the offseason, they're in shorts, they're not wearing pads, there's minimal contact, minimal pass rush for the quarterback. So it's hard to really get a sense of where everybody is right now, especially Jordan Love. But that being said, there have been good days and there have been not so good days, and there have been just like, okay, fine, take the check down days and it's tough for us to gauge because we don't always know what the coaching staff is looking for out of Jordan Love. And right now, Matt LaFleur wants him to work on the fundamentals, make sure he's reading with his feet has been a key phrase, and also just being able to go through his progression and take what's there. So some days there might be things that are there for him and that aren't there other days. But and not to mention the first couple of weeks of the offseason program, when we did get to see Jordan Love, he was throwing to receivers that, also weren't getting a lot of reps last year because the most veteran receivers on the team weren't present for the first 2 weeks of minicamp. So over the last 2 days, Jordan Love is starting to throw to the likes of not even Davante Adams, because Davante Adams hasn't been a full participant in the offseason program over the last couple of days. And his reasoning is because he doesn't want to push it too much at this point in the offseason. B, he wants some of the younger players to get some reps. So that's just kind of where we are right now. But that being said, Love had a really good day yesterday. I was not there the day before on Tuesday of this week when apparently he did not have nearly as good of a day, missed some passes, and then also, had an unsuccessful 2-minute drill yesterday. He had some really nice passes on third down, some deep balls. We saw him connect on some deeper passes that we haven't really gotten to see from him so far this offseason program, and a successful 2-minute drill. So a lot of good things, but even Matt LaFleur wouldn't get too high or even too low about some of the bad, quote unquote, bad things at this point in the offseason, just because it's early. It's early. So I would take it all in stride. I wouldn't, for anybody who is evaluating Jordan Love and is curious to know, can this guy, if need be a starter week 1, if called upon? Now is not the time you're going to get your answers. It just isn't. I think patience, I feel like I repeat myself a lot. The word patience, I say it a lot because we always want answers right now. And sometimes it just doesn't work that way. So patience with Jordan Love, even if he's not a great quarterback this year, if he does get the opportunity to start, patience still. But we'll see when preseason comes. We'll get a better sense of, is he capable of starting week 1?
What is the pulse of that fan base up there? I have my one of my son's teachers. They're from up there. She and her sister and her dad own a share of the team. They come up, and I know that she and her sister have different feelings, are a little bit, different on how they see it. But as a whole, are fans on Rodgers' side? Are they against him? Murphy said that it's divided, but from what you hear, is it really divided, or was that kind of like a hardball type of stance that he was throwing there?
We're really offended by what Murphy said, that this has divided the fan base, and it has. I mean, at least from what I've seen in my mentions on Instagram, comments, we do a daily, somewhat regular live stream in the off season, and it seems like people are pretty divided. I would agree. I think there's the side of, pro team, you got to be loyal to the team, and then there's pro player. Rodgers has the right to demand whatever he wants, and the Packers should give it to him, whatever that is. And then there's also the people that are just kind of over it. I think there's folks out there who just don't want to deal with the drama. They just want their quarterback to be back, or not, or go. I think, again, maybe it's the people that don't have any patience and just want this to be over. And I understand where everybody is coming from. I don't think anybody wants to be in this situation. So, yeah, it is my understanding, that the fan base has divided. I don't think it's causing any, internal battling between fans or anything. I don't know what that would look like. But I think what Murphy said after that was kind of interesting, that the less the two sides say publicly, the better. And I don't really know what that means. My interpretation is that they want to protect their individual images. They want to protect the images on both sides. Rodgers should want to protect his image, and then the Packers should want to protect theirs and not let too much get out about the disagreement. I guess, I don't know. I would like to know more personally, just as a nosy person. But that's not exactly what they're doing at the very least. So yeah, I would definitely say that fans have some divided opinions up here.
Well, I know you have to get ready to roll out there to practice, but lastly, if you can make a prediction for us, how does this thing, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but how does this thing end in your best guess?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't think that they're going to trade him. I don't think they want to trade him, and they don't have to trade him. I think it's going to depend on a few different things, and one of them is that, do they feel comfortable with starting any of the other quarterbacks on the roster week 1? Is Jordan Love ready to start? And if he's not ready to start, is Blake Bortles okay to be the starter week 1? If Rodgers doesn't want to come back, he could sit. He's going to owe the team some money this year, and maybe he doesn't want to do that. But I just have a hard time thinking that the Packers, what do they gain from trading him? Unless Rodgers retires, and I don't think he wants to do that. I think people have pulled out the Jeopardy card and being like, oh, well, Rodgers could use that as leverage. Like, he has Jeopardy in his back pocket. He could go post Jeopardy and leave football and then screw the Packers over. And he was like, he did an Instagram live, like right after the first Jeopardy episode. And he was saying like, yeah, I could host Jeopardy. It would only take me 2 months out of the year to host a whole season of Jeopardy, and I could do it in the off season. I wouldn't even have to retire. So like, I don't think Jeopardy is his leverage. And also, Rodgers hasn't been named the next host permanently of Jeopardy either. So like, I don't know. Anyway, maybe that's just maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. But I guess the short answer is I don't know. I think he'll either come back or he'll sit out, but I don't see the team trading him. I could be very wrong. We'll see.
All right. Well, sounds good. I really appreciate your time and your insight. This was fantastic. Getting an updated and up close look on this thing. Just high compelling drama here. At least you don't have a boring off season. Back when I used to cover Washington, it was like, well, at least there's always something to write about, no matter what time of year it is. So at least, you've got great stuff, stories to tell. So tell everybody real quick where they can find you and all your work.
Sure. Yes, I'm on Twitter at Reiner, Olivia, jsonline.com, packersnews.com. Lots of coverage from minicamp, lots of Aaron Rodgers coverage. We also do a somewhat regular live stream throughout the offseason, although I think with the upcoming break with OTAs coming to an end, we'll probably be live a little less frequently, but Packers News on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. Come chat with us. We'd love to see you there.
All right. Thank you so much. And they've already told me that for training camp, one of the stops is going to be Green Bay. So I will see you in a little more than a month.
Oh, awesome. Can't wait to see you.
This episode is brought to you by PayPal. Online. It's where PayPal was born. But it's not all dancing cats and double rainbows in cyberspace. I mean, one minute you're trying to outbid Soup Boy 99 on some antique spoons. Next thing, your bank account is nothing but tumbleweeds. But now, PayPal has ventured out into the real world with non-dancing cats and actual rainbows, ready to help you start taking payments in person. It's a safe and easy way to get paid. Just generate your unique QR code in the PayPal app for customers to scan and start accepting PayPal in person today. Learn more at paypal.com/US/getQRcode.
I'm Amanda Klutz, Broadway actress, dancer, and celebrity trainer, and I partnered with Equinox to create a custom AK rope class. It's a rhythmic group fitness experience, and music is an integral component. Jump and sculpt using the rope in ways you've never imagined. It's time to get back to moving our bodies. AK Rope, my signature class, now available at Equinox, is a safe, fun, and positive way to do just that.
Hey, this is Joel Corey from Inside the Cap. I know you're enjoying Football Jones, hosted by Mike Jones, which goes in depth with coaches, executives, players, and NFL insiders. Once you're done with listening to Football Jones, check out my podcast, Inside the Cap, which explains the ins and outs of the NFL salary cap and player contract negotiations. So enjoy Football Jones, Inside the Cap, and other fine products brought to you by Empire Media.
Thanks so much to Olivia for her time and insight. It was good to talk to her, and as you can tell, she is just as plugged in as much as possible, and she's out there every single day talking to members of the organization, and really a lot of people just were all in wait and see mode. The only people who really know what's going to happen basically is probably Aaron Rodgers, and even Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst are waiting on him, and there is stuff that they can do. And I think it's interesting that we continue to hear from former teammates of Rodgers. James Jones was on with Colin Cowherd of Fox Sports earlier this week, and he said he thinks it's visible, and he thinks that Rodgers will be at training camp. We have not heard anybody who's talked to Rodgers say he's out of there. So maybe that's cause for optimism for the Packers. We will find out. But again, there's still plenty of time. We've got the beginning of June, and the 27th, I believe, is the start date. The 27th of July is the start date of training camps. And again, if Rodgers is there on time, boom, all of this goes away. But even if he's not there right away, I think the Packers will still be in okay shape if he is there a couple days later. But for the sake of the Packers, for the sake of the coaches and the players, you hope that, and their fans, you hope that they can get this thing resolved. But again, this will continue to be the big story as we continue to watch this whole thing unfold. Well, I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for listening. Do me a favor and share this podcast with as many friends as you can. If everybody can share this with, say, just 3 friends, let them know. If you are a football fan, pass it on to them. That'll help us out. And I will talk to you guys again next week.